The dust on Terra Prime never really settled. It just moved around, kicked up by the wind or the boots of soldiers. Elias sat on the remains of a stone wall, wiping the grime off his face. His rifle, a heavy thing made of black metal and glowing blue tubes, rested against his leg. He looked tired. His eyes were sunken, and his skin was pale. "You look like death, Elias," a voice said. Elias looked up. It was Sarah. She was the medic for their squad. She was younger than him, with a sharp face and hair tied back tight. She was carrying a med kit that looked too big for her. "I feel like it," Elias said. "The radiation from these rifles is cooking us from the inside out." Sarah sat down next to him. "It's the trade-off. We shoot plasma, we lose a little life. That's how they work." "I hate these things," Elias said, tapping the barrel of the gun. "We don't even know who made them. We just find them in the ground, clean them off, and they kill for us." "It keeps the Iron Coalition alive," Sarah said. Below them, in the valley, the war continued. The Iron Coalition was fighting the free cities. It was a war that had been going on for as long as anyone could remember. They fought over water, over old technology, and over pride. Elias watched the flashes of blue light. "We call ourselves warriors," he muttered, "but we are just scavengers fighting over scraps." Suddenly, the wind stopped. The birds in the sky stopped flying. The noise of the battle in the valley faded away. It wasn't that the soldiers stopped shooting. The sound was just gone. Elias stood up. He felt a strange pressure in his ears. "Do you feel that?" he asked. Sarah stood up too, looking nervous. "The air, it feels heavy, like before a storm." Then the sky tore open. It wasn't a cloud, and it wasn't an explosion. It was a rip in the blue fabric of the sky. A massive shape pushed through the tear. It was a ship, but it was like nothing Elias had ever seen. It was geometric, perfect, and silver. It had no windows, no engines, and no seams. It was just a massive, floating mountain of metal. Behind the first ship came another, then another. Hundreds of silver ships descended from the clouds. They were silent. They blocked out the sun, casting a long, cold shadow over the valley. The soldiers in the valley stopped shooting. They looked up. Men from the Iron Coalition and men from the free cities dropped their weapons. For the first time in years, there was silence on the battlefield. "What are they?" Sarah whispered. Her hand shook as she gripped her medkit. "I don't know," Elias said, "but they aren't from here." The ships didn't move. They just hovered in the air, covering the entire horizon. The pressure in the air grew stronger. It wasn't just in their ears anymore. It was inside their heads. A voice filled Elias's mind. It wasn't a sound that he heard with his ears. It was a thought that wasn't his. It was cold, deep, and powerful. It spoke in a language he didn't know, but he understood the meaning perfectly. "Reclaim protocol initiated. The project is active." Elias fell to his knees, clutching his head. It felt like a spike was being driven into his brain. Around him, the other soldiers did the same. They were screaming, but the voice in their heads was louder. "Designation, Species 892. Common name, human. Status, weapon of war. Control required." Elias gasped for air. He tried to stand, but his body wouldn't listen. He felt like an ant under a magnifying glass. "Weapon," Elias thought. "I am not a weapon. I am a man." The voice answered him. "You are the product of genetic engineering. You were created to fight. You were created to obey. The experiment is concluded. The masters have returned." Suddenly the pain stopped. The presence in his head pulled back, waiting. Elias stood up slowly. He looked at Sarah. She was pale, her eyes wide with shock. "Did you hear that?" she asked.
Yes, Elias said. They said they made us. Why? Sarah asked. Why make us and leave us here for centuries? The voice boomed across the planet again, answering them. The galaxy is at war. We required a soldier. We created you. We left you to mature. Now the enemy approaches. It is time to activate the legions. Elias looked at his rifle, the weapon that they had scavenged, the weapon that used human life force to fire, suddenly made sense. It wasn't just old tech, it was a key. It was designed to work with human biology. The humans on Terra Prime weren't the descendants of a lost civilization. They were the tools left in the box. Down in the valley, the strange silver ships began to drop smaller craft to the ground. These were sleek and black, hovering just above the dirt. Ramps lowered on the black craft, and tall figures walked out. They were thin, with long limbs and heads that seemed too big for their bodies. They wore silver armor that looked like liquid. They didn't carry guns. They had devices on their arms that hummed with energy. They were the architects. The nearest group of soldiers, a unit from the free cities, panicked. They raised their rifles and fired at the architects in the valley. The blue plasma bolts hit the silver armor and disappeared. The architects didn't flinch. One of them raised its arm. A beam of red light shot out and swept across the battlefield. It didn't freeze the soldiers, it froze them. The soldiers stopped moving. They stood perfectly still, their eyes staring forward. "Stop!" Elias shouted. He didn't know why he shouted. He just knew he had to do something. He grabbed his rifle and aimed at the architect in the valley. "Elias, don't!" Sarah yelled. Elias pulled the trigger. A bolt of blue plasma shot out of his rifle. It flew across the distance and hit the architect. But instead of freezing the ally, the bolt was absorbed by a shield. The architect turned his head slowly. He looked up the hill, directly at Elias. Elias felt a sharp pain in his mind. It was a command. Drop the weapon. Kneel. He fought it. His hands shook. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to obey, to bow down to the Creator. But he gritted his teeth. He remembered the hunger, the poverty, the years of fighting for nothing. The rage boiled up inside him. "No," he growled.
The architect seemed confused. It sent a stronger command. Obey. Elias threw the rifle down, not because he wanted to obey, but because the rifle was useless. He drew his knife. It was a simple piece of sharpened metal, one he had made himself. "We are not your slaves," Elias shouted. His voice echoed in the silence. Sarah stepped up beside him. She pulled a pistol from her belt. It was a kinetic weapon, using gunpowder. It was old technology, primitive compared to the plasma rifles, but it was human. "We don't know who you are," Sarah said, her voice shaking but loud, "but this is our planet." The architect in the valley floated into the air. It spoke out loud, its voice vibrating in the air. "You are malfunctioning units. You will be recalibrated." More black craft landed. Hundreds of architects marched out. They began to herd the frozen soldiers toward the ships. "We have to run," Sarah said, grabbing Elias's arm. "We can't fight them. Not yet." Elias looked at the valley. He saw his people being treated like cattle. He looked at the silver ships in the sky. The truth hit him hard. The legends of the old gods were real, but they weren't gods. They were monsters, and humans were just the dogs they had bred to fight their wars. Elias looked at Sarah. He saw the fear in her eyes, but he also saw anger. "Run where?" Elias asked. "They own the sky." "We hide," Sarah said, "in the ruins, the old caves, the places where their scanners might not work." Elias nodded. He took one last look at the silver beings. He memorized the way they moved. He memorized the way they stood. "Okay," Elias said,
We run, but we aren't hiding forever. They turned and sprinted away from the ridge, moving down into the dark forests that bordered the valley. As they ran, the voice in their heads faded into the background, but it never went away completely. It was a constant reminder. We are here. Elias ran faster. He wasn't running just to save his life. He was running because he knew that if he stopped now, he would never be free again. The realization burned in his chest. He was a soldier, yes, but he was a soldier who refused to be used. The shadow of the ships covered the land. The age of humanity was over. The age of the reclamation had begun. But as Elias disappeared into the trees, he gripped his knife tighter. He didn't know how and he didn't know when, but he knew one thing for sure. The architects made a mistake. They left them alone for too long. They forgot that when you corner a wild animal, it doesn't roll over, it bites. And humans, they were the wildest creatures in the galaxy. The city was quiet now. The noise of the old war was gone, replaced by a low, mechanical humming. It was the sound of the silver ships floating in the sky. They did not move like human ships. They did not wobble or shake. They stayed perfectly still, like they were bolted to the air. Mark sat in the shadows of a broken building. He used to be a tech scavenger. He used to dig in the dirt for pieces of the old world, hoping to find a battery or a circuit board that still worked. Now he didn't need to dig. The old world had come to him. He watched the street below. Tall, thin creatures walked in straight lines. They were the enforcers. They wore armor that looked like liquid silver. They did not speak to each other. They did not look at the ruined buildings. They only moved with purpose. Mark held his breath. He held a small device in his hand. It was a scanner he had built from scrap. He wanted to know what the enforcers were doing. He pointed the scanner at a group of them gathered in the town square. Human people were standing in the square. There were hundreds of them. They were scared. They held their children close. They looked at the silver soldiers with wide eyes. One of the enforcers stepped forward. It raised a long arm. A device on its wrist glowed with a soft blue light. A sound came from the device. It was not loud, but it hurt the ears. It was a high-pitched whine that drilled into the brain. Mark felt a headache start instantly. He put his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. The sound was not in the air. It was in his skull. The voice of the architect returned to Mark's mind. It was the same cold voice from the sky. Compliance is mandatory. Proceed to the transport vessels. Processing will begin. The people in the square began to move. They looked like they were sleepwalking. Their eyes were empty. They walked toward the ramps that led into the hovering ships. They're hypnotizing them, Mark whispered to himself. It's a control signal. But then something strange happened. A big man in the crowd stopped. He was a worker, wearing dirty clothes and heavy boots. He shook his head violently. He grabbed his temples and screamed. The sound stopped for him. The control broke. The man looked up at the enforcer. His face was red with anger. He didn't look sleepy anymore. He looked furious. "Get away from us!" the man yelled. He picked up a heavy metal pipe from the ground. The enforcer tilted its head. It seemed confused. The signal should have worked. The enforcer raised its weapon. A red beam shot out, meant to stun the man. The man saw the beam coming. He didn't dodge. He didn't freeze. He lunged forward with the pipe. He moved with a speed that wasn't human. The red beam hit his shoulder, burning his clothes, but he didn't stop. He swung the pipe with all his strength. Clang! The pipe hit the enforcer's silver leg. The enforcer staggered back. It was not damaged, but it was surprised. Its sensors did not predict this behavior. The man kept hitting the machine, again and again. Other people in the square woke up. The pain of the signal triggered something in their brains. It wasn't just obedience, it was rage. The rage burned away the control. Suddenly, the crowd was not a flock of sheep anymore. It was a mob. They attacked the enforcers with rocks, with bare hands, with anything they could find. The enforcers fired their red beams, burning people, but the humans did not run away. They swarmed the silver soldiers.
Mark watched from the window. He couldn't believe his eyes. The enforcers were stronger and had better weapons, but there were too many humans. And the humans were fighting like their lives depended on it, because they did. One enforcer was pulled down by 10 men. They punched and kicked its silver armor until it stopped moving. Another enforcer tried to fly away, but a woman threw a heavy chain around its neck and pulled it down. "The leash is broken," Mark said. "They can't control us." Suddenly, the door behind Mark opened. He spun around, raising his wrench, ready to fight. "It's me," a voice whispered. It was Elias. He walked into the room, followed by Sarah. They looked dirty and tired. They had cuts on their faces and hands. "I saw what happened in the square. It's chaos down there." "It's not chaos," Elias said, looking out the window. "It's a war. They expected us to be robots. They forgot we are animals." Sarah moved to the window to look. She pointed at a large group of enforcers marching toward the square. "Look, they're sending reinforcements. Those ones are bigger." Elias narrowed his eyes. "They don't like losing. We can't stay here." "We need a plan," Mark said. "We can't just hit them with rocks forever. They have ships. We have nothing." "We have us," Elias said. "That's what they're afraid of." "They aren't afraid," Sarah said. "They're annoyed. There is a difference. If they get really angry, they'll just bomb the city from the sky." "We have to make them afraid," Elias said. He turned to Mark. "You know about tech, right? Can you disable their signal?" Mark shook his head. "Not from here. The signal is coming from the main ship in orbit. I can block it locally, maybe, but I need equipment. I need a power source." "Where can we find that?" Sarah asked. "The old bunker," Mark said. "It's under the city library. It has a generator from the time of the architects. It might still work." "Then we go there," Elias said. He checked his knife. "We hit them while they're busy with the mob." Elias, Sarah, and Mark left the building and moved into the alleyways. They stayed in the shadows. The streets were loud with screaming and the sound of metal on metal. The smell of smoke and ozone filled the air. As they ran, they saw a group of enforcers cornering a family. The enforcers raised their arms to fire. "Go!" Elias shouted. He didn't run away. He ran toward the enforcers. Sarah raised her kinetic pistol and fired. The bullet hit an enforcer in the eye lens. The glass shattered, and the enforcer spun around, confused. Another enforcer tried to fly away, but a woman threw a heavy chain around its neck and pulled it down. "They have to move," Sarah said. "More are coming." They reached the library. It was a grand building with broken columns and piles of books rotting on the floor. They ran inside and found the hidden door in the basement. It was heavy metal, rusted shut. Mark hooked up his small battery pack to the door mechanism. Sparks flew, and the door groaned. Slowly, it slid open. Inside, it was dark. Mark flipped a switch, and old lights flickered to life. They walked down a long hallway until they reached the generator room. In the center of the room sat a massive machine. It was quiet now, covered in dust. "This is it," Mark said. "The heart of Terra Prime. It's an old geothermal tap." He began to work on the controls. Sarah and Elias stood guard at the door. "Do you think we can win?" Sarah asked. Her voice was quiet. Elias looked at her. "Win? I don't know, but we can make them bleed." "I hate this," Sarah said. "I just want to heal people, but now I have to help kill things that might be our fathers." "They aren't our fathers," Elias said firmly. "A father doesn't come back to sell his children." Suddenly, the generator hummed to life. The lights in the bunker got brighter. The machine began to shake. "I did it!" yelled Mark. "It's online!" "Good. Now what does that give us?" Elias said. Mark pulled a wire from the generator and connected it to a large transmitter dish in the corner of the room. "I can broadcast a jamming signal. It won't shut down the ships, but it will stop the control command. It'll wake up everyone in the city, not just the people in the square. Everyone." "Do it," Elias said. Mark flipped a switch. Outside, the high-pitched whine stopped.
In the streets, the people who were walking like zombies suddenly stopped. They looked around. The fog in their minds cleared. They saw the enforcers. They remembered the fear, but now they also felt the anger that came with freedom. Across the city, the roar of 1,000,000 human voices rose up. It was a primal sound. It was the sound of a pack turning on the hunter. In the bunker, the lights flashed. The machinery whirred. "They know we did this," Mark said, looking at the monitor. "They're locking on to our signal." "Let them come," Elias said, gripping his knife. "We are ready." The ground above them shook. The enforcers were coming. But this time, the humans of Terra Prime were awake, and they were very, very angry. The experiment had failed because the subjects had developed a will of their own, and that will was stronger than any programming. The trip to the northern mountains took 3 days. The group moved only at night, hiding in caves during the day to avoid the silver ships that patrolled the sky. The cold was biting, and the wind howled like a dying animal. Elias walked at the front, his eyes constantly scanning the ridges above them. Sarah followed close behind, shivering in her thin jacket. Mark brought the rear, carrying the heavy portable jammer they had salvaged from the bunker.
They were not just running anymore. They were on a mission. Mark had found old data in the bunker's computer. It spoke of a place called the Crypt. It was not a tomb, but a laboratory. The data said that the architects had left something behind there, something important. "We are getting close," Mark said, his teeth chattering. He looked at a small screen in his hand. "The signal is stronger." "What did the data say about this place again?" Sarah asked. She was rubbing her hands together to keep warm. "It said it was the primary storage facility," Mark explained, "but I think it's more than that. The files called it the prototype hold." Elias stopped walking. He looked at the dark wall of rock in front of them. "Does that mean a weapon?" "Maybe," Mark said, "or maybe it's the first one of us." They reached the entrance of the cave as the sun began to rise. It was hidden behind a waterfall of freezing water. They were soaked to the bone as they pushed through the water and into the dry darkness inside. The air here was different. It smelled like stale air and chemicals. Mark turned on a flashlight. The beam cut through the dust, revealing a smooth metal door. It looked brand new, untouched by the centuries. There were no handles, just a small screen. "Can you open it?" Elias asked. Mark stepped forward. He connected his portable computer to the door's panel. "Give me a minute. The code is old, very old." Sarah looked back at the waterfall they had just come through. "Do you think they followed us?" "I don't see any ships," Elias said, "but they are smart. They will find us." Suddenly, the metal door beeped. A series of lights flashed green, and with a heavy hiss of escaping air, the door slid open. The room inside was massive. It was lit by a soft blue glow coming from tubes in the floor. There were consoles everywhere, covered in dust. But in the center of the room, standing alone, was a large glass tube. Inside the tube was a body. They walked closer slowly. The figure inside was tall. He looked human, but too perfect. His skin was pale, and his hair was white. He wore a black suit with silver lines running through it. "Is he dead?" Sarah whispered. "No," Mark said, looking at the readings on the console. "He is in stasis. He is alive. His heart beats once every hour." Elias stepped up to the glass. He looked at the man's face. It was peaceful. "Who are you?" A voice said. "My name is Adam." The group jumped. They looked around, but there was no one else there. The voice had come from inside their heads again, but it was not the cold voice of the architects. It was calm, smooth, and human. "Where are you?" Elias asked, aiming his rifle at the glass tube. "I am speaking through the interface. I am Adam. I have been waiting for you." "Waiting?" Sarah asked. "For how long?" "A long time," Adam replied. "I was put here to sleep when the project failed. I am the bridge, the first successful synthesis." The glass tube began to lower. A mist flowed out from the bottom. The man inside, Adam, took a deep breath. His eyes opened. They were completely black. No white, no iris,
just deep black. He stepped out of the tube. He did not stumble or stretch. He stood perfectly still, looking at the three of them. "You are the soldiers," Adam said. It was a statement, not a question. "The flawed ones, the wild ones." "We are humans," Elias said sharply, "and we are fighting the architects." Adam walked to a console. He placed his hand on it. Instantly, screens lit up all over the room. They showed images of space, stars, and massive battles. "You are not fighting. You are resisting. There is a difference. The architects are not here to destroy you. They are here to use you. There is a threat coming, a threat that scares even them." "What threat?" Mark asked, looking at the screens. "The Void Walkers," Adam said. "They are creatures of darkness. They eat worlds. The architects created humans to fight them. They gave you strength, speed, and the ability to adapt. But you were too aggressive. You were unstable. The architects could not control you, so they left. But now, the Void Walkers have returned to this galaxy. The architects are desperate. They need their army back." Adam turned to face them. "If they take you, they will put chips in your brains. You will become mindless drones. You will die fighting the Void Walkers, and you will lose." "Can we stop them?" Sarah asked. "We have no ships. We have no army." Adam smiled slightly. It was a strange expression on his perfect face. "You have the biggest army on the planet. You just haven't woken it up yet." He walked over to Elias. Adam was taller than him. He reached out and touched Elias's forehead. "What are you doing?" Elias yelled, trying to pull back. "Be still. I am unlocking what is already there." Elias felt a jolt of electricity shoot through his body. It didn't hurt, but it was intense. He gasped. His vision blurred. When his sight cleared, everything looked different. He could see the heat coming from Sarah's body. He could hear the electricity humming in the lights. He could feel the vibration of the mountain around them. "What did you do to me?" Elias asked, breathing hard. "I turned on your dormant genes," Adam said. "You were built to be a weapon, Elias. You have the ability to command the technology of the architects. Not just use it, but control it." Elias stared at a floating drone that sat in the corner of the room. He focused on it. He didn't say anything. He just thought, "Move." The drone rose into the air and flew to his hand. Elias stared at the drone. "How?" "Because the tools recognize their master," Adam said. "The architects made a mistake when they left. They thought they could just turn you off, but life doesn't work like that. You evolved. You became stronger than they intended." Mark was typing furiously on the console. "Adam, if we can control the tech, where do we get it? The architects have it all." "Look at the map," Adam said.
On the big screen, a red dot appeared on the moon. "That is the lunar armory," Adam explained. "The architects hid their fleet there, hundreds of ships waiting for the command to activate. If the architects get there first, they will use those ships to enslave Earth. If we get there first, we have a chance." "We can't fly to the moon," Sarah said. "We don't have a rocket." Adam walked to the back of the room. He pressed a button on the wall, and a heavy panel slid open. Inside was a smaller, sleek black ship. It looked like a fighter jet, but smoother. "I have a ship," Adam said, "but I need a pilot." Suddenly, the cave shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. "They are here," Adam said calmly. "They tracked you." Outside the cave, the roar of engines filled the air. Heavy boots banged on the metal door of the entrance. "We have to go," Elias said. He grabbed Sarah's arm. "Adam, can you fly that thing?" "I can interface with it," Adam said, "but I need someone to handle the weapons. The ship needs 2 minds to work at full power." "I'll fly it," a voice said from the shadows. They all turned. A young man stepped out from behind a stack of crates. He had messy hair and wore goggles around his neck. He was holding a wrench. "David?" Mark asked. "How did you get here?" David said, "I hid in the supply truck back at the city. I wanted to help. I heard you talking about a ship." David walked up to the black fighter. He ran his hand along the wing. "I've studied the old manuals. I know how these engines work." The banging on the door got louder.
The metal was starting to bend. "We don't have time to argue," Elias said. "David, get in the pilot's seat. Adam, you take the co-pilot spot. Mark, you too. You can manage the sensors. Sarah and I will take the gun turrets." They scrambled into the ship. The inside was tight, with screens glowing softly. David sat in the front and grabbed the controls. His hands moved fast over the switches. "Systems online. Engine startup. We have power." The door to the cave finally gave way. Enforcers poured in, their weapons raised. "Hold on!" David yelled. The ship lifted off the ground smoothly. It didn't need a runway. It just floated upward. David pushed the throttle forward, and the ship shot forward like a bullet. The enforcers fired red beams at them, but the ship's shields flared blue and absorbed the shots. The ship accelerated out of the cave entrance, blasting through the waterfall. They erupted into the bright morning sky. The wind roared past them as they climbed higher. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked, looking at the turret screen. "Up," Adam said, "to the moon, to wake up the fleet." Elias looked down at the planet below. The silver ships of the architects were swarming like ants. He knew they would be chased. He knew the battle had just started, but for the first time, he felt ready. The power in his head hummed, waiting to be used. "We are coming for you," Elias whispered. The black ship tore through the clouds, leaving Terra Prime behind. The blue sky turned into the deep black of space. The silence was heavy, but inside the ship, the noise was loud. The engines hummed with a deep vibration that rattled their teeth. David held the controls tight. His knuckles were white. "I've never flown anything this fast," he said. "The controls read my mind before I even touch them." "That is because it is an interface," Adam said calmly from the co-pilot seat. He was closing his eyes, focusing on the signals in space. "The ship is responding to your intent. Do not fight it. Flow with it." Behind them, in the small gunner bay, Elias watched the radar screen. Red lights were blinking rapidly. "We have company," Elias said into the comms system. 3 architect fighters are coming fast." Sarah sat next to him at the second gunner station. She looked nervous, but her hands were steady on the triggers. "Can we outrun them?" "Not in open space," Elias said. "David, take us toward the debris field near the moon. We might lose them there." "I'm on it," David shouted. He pulled the stick to the right. The ship banked sharply, pressing them all into their seats. Outside the window, the moon grew larger. It was a gray, dead rock, but as they got closer, they could see structures on the surface. Massive spires and docking bays stuck out of the craters. This was the lunar armory. "We're almost there," Adam said, "but the architects are already scrambling. They know what we're trying to do." Suddenly, the ship shook. A red beam of energy blasted past their wing. "They're firing!" Mark yelled from the sensor station in the back. "Shields at 80%! "Elias, Sarah, do something!" David shouted. Elias grabbed the controls for the plasma cannons. He looked at the targeting screen. The red dots were moving fast. He tried to lock on, but they were too agile. "I can't get a clear shot," Elias said. "Let me help," Adam's voice said in their heads. Suddenly, the screen in front of Elias changed. It didn't just show dots anymore. It showed predicted paths. Adam was linking his brain to the ship's computer and sharing the data with Elias. Elias saw the pattern. He waited for a split second. The enemy ship moved left, but Elias fired where it was going to be. The plasma bolt hit the engine. The enemy ship exploded into dust. "Good shot!" Sarah cheered. She fired her own cannons at the second ship. It clipped the wing, sending the enemy spinning into the dark void. The third ship pulled back, seemingly afraid. It turned and flew back toward the main architect fleet. "They're running," Mark said. "No," Adam said, his voice dark. "They have been detected by the High Architect." "We can't stop now," David said. He pushed the throttle to maximum. "Hold on!" The ship dove toward the moon's surface. They flew through a canyon of gray rock. The speed was terrifying. At the last second, David pulled up, bringing them down into a massive landing bay hidden inside a crater. The ship landed with a thud. The ramp lowered.
"We are here," Adam said. "The control center is this way." They ran out of the ship. The bay was huge. It was filled with rows of sleek silver warships. There were hundreds of them, silent and waiting. "Look at all of them," Sarah whispered. "This is an entire fleet." "It was supposed to be ours," Adam said, "but the architects locked it down. We need to get to the main tower to unlock the controls." They ran across the cold floor. Their boots echoed in the silence. They reached a heavy door that led to the tower. Mark ran to the panel and started typing. "The door is encrypted," Mark said. "It will take me a few minutes." "Hurry," Elias said. He looked back at the landing bay. Above them, through the open roof, he saw more silver ships descending. "They are landing soldiers!" Mark cursed under his breath. "Got it." The door slid open. They ran into a long hallway lit by blue lights. At the end of the hall was the command chamber. It had a massive window that looked out over the lunar landscape. Standing in the center of the room was a tall figure. It was not wearing a helmet. Its face was long and pale, with eyes that glowed like stars. It wore robes of gold and silver. It was the High Architect. The creature did not look surprised to see them. It turned slowly. "Adam," it said. Its voice was like glass breaking. "You have malfunctioned." "I have evolved," Adam replied. He stepped forward. "And we are taking back what is ours." "You own nothing," the High Architect said. "You are code. You are hardware. You are tools. Tools do not decide their purpose." Elias raised his rifle. "We decide now." The High Architect lifted a hand. Suddenly, Elias couldn't move. His body froze in place. He tried to pull the trigger, but his finger wouldn't budge. Sarah, David, and Mark were frozen too. Only Adam remained free. "You see," the High Architect said, "you are biological machines. I can stop you with a single thought." Adam stepped closer. "You can stop them because you control the signal, but you cannot control me. I am the prototype. I have the codes." "You have the keys," the High Architect corrected, "but you lack the power to use them against me. I am the system admin." Adam smiled. "That is true. I cannot defeat you with technology. You are too strong in the network." Adam looked at Elias. Adam's black eyes met Elias's human eyes. "Forgive me," Adam's voice said in Elias's head. Elias felt a sharp pain in his mind. It felt like Adam was ripping open a barrier. Suddenly the pain stopped, and a rush of energy flooded through Elias. He could move again, but it wasn't just his muscles. He could feel the emotions of everyone in the room. The High Architect looked confused. "How are you moving? I did not release you." "I am not moving on my own," Elias said. His voice sounded distorted, overlapping with Adam's. "We are moving together." Adam had given up his physical safety to link his mind directly to Elias's, but he had done something else. He opened the floodgates of the human collective. He had let the High Architect feel what humans felt. The High Architect gasped. It stepped back. "What is this noise, this chaos?" "It is called spite. It is called hope. It is called rage. You cannot process these things because you do not have them." The High Architect grabbed its head. It was a being of pure logic. It couldn't handle the messy, wild emotions of the human race that Adam was feeding into it. The sheer unpredictability was like a virus. "Stop it!" the High Architect screamed. Its shields flickered. "Do it now, Elias!" Adam yelled. Elias didn't use his gun. He raised his hand. He focused on the massive glass window in front of them. He didn't try to push it with his muscles. He pushed it with his new power Adam had unlocked. He pushed it with his will. The window shattered. The air in the room rushed out toward the vacuum of space. Papers flew, equipment rattled, and the High Architect was lifted off his feet. The alien tried to grab a console, but his grip slipped. The High Architect flew out the window and into the cold darkness of space. It didn't explode, it just drifted away, spinning helplessly. The emergency doors slammed shut, sealing the room. The air pressure returned.
Mark and Sarah fell to the floor, gasping for air. Is it gone?" Sarah asked. "The High Architect is gone," Adam said, leaning against the wall. "He looked weak, but the fleet is still here. We have to take command." David ran to the main console. He sat in the captain's chair. "The system is asking for a commander." Adam walked over and placed his hand on the console. "I transfer authority to the human representative." He looked at Elias. "It has to be you, Elias. You are the warrior. You lead them." Elias walked to the console. He placed his hand next to Adam's. The screen lit up green. "Welcome, Commander," the ship's computer said. On the screen, a red light turned to blue, then another, and another. All across the lunar armory, lights were turning blue. "We did it," Mark said, breathless. "We have the fleet." But then an alarm sounded. A red warning light flashed on the screen. "What is that?" Sarah asked. Adam looked at the deep space sensor map. His face went pale. "It is not the architects," Elias said. At the edge of the solar system, a massive black cloud was forming. It looked like ink spilling in water. "The Void Walkers," Adam whispered. "They have arrived." The screen on the bridge showed the darkness swallowing the stars. It was not just a cloud, it was a living shadow. The Void Walkers had arrived. The sensors showed thousands of small shapes moving inside the black fog, like teeth in a mouth. "They're beautiful," Mark whispered, staring at the screen with wide eyes. "They are death," Adam said sharply. "Do not look at them for too long. They can confuse your mind." Elias stood in the center of the bridge. He could feel the power of the lunar armory humming beneath his feet. The hundreds of human ships in the bays were awake. They were waiting for his command.
"David," Elias said, "can you launch the fleet?" David was typing furiously on the controls. "I can launch the fighters and the cruisers, but Elias, look at the architect ships. They are running away." On the screen, the silver ships of the High Architect were retreating. They were turning their backs on the moon and flying toward the jump gate, trying to escape the solar system. "Cowards," Sarah said, gripping her pistol. "They started this war, and now they are leaving us to die." "They are afraid," Adam said. "They know the Void Walkers are stronger than they are. They have no soldiers left to fight, only us." Elias watched the silver ships leaving. A thought crossed his mind. He could let them go. He could stay here and fight the darkness alone, and humanity would probably die. Or he could use the anger he felt. "David," Elias said, his voice cold, "open a channel to all human ships." "Channel open," David said. Elias took a deep breath. "This is Elias. We were born in the mud. We were treated like dogs and tools. The so-called masters are running away because they are afraid of the dark, but we are not afraid. We are the children of Terra Prime. We fight." On the screens, the human ships began to move. They lifted off the gray moon dust. It looked like a swarm of angry hornets leaving a nest. There were hundreds of ships, big and small. They weren't as sleek as the architect ships, but they were rough and sharp. "Hold your fire on the architects," Elias commanded. "Target the Void Walkers." The fleet flew out of the moon's shadow and toward the black cloud. The Void Walkers reacted immediately. Tentacles of black lightning shot out from the fog. It hit the front line of human ships. Some ships exploded instantly, turning into fireballs. Others just vanished, eaten by the darkness. "Shields up!" David yelled, shaking the controls of their flagship. "This is going to be rough." The ship shook violently as they entered the battle. Elias stood at the tactical map. He could feel the minds of the other human pilots. He felt their fear, but he also felt their rage. It was a hot, burning fire. He used that fire to guide them. "Formation Alpha," Elias commanded. "Don't let them surround you." The human ships moved in a chaotic way. They didn't fly in perfect lines like the architects used to. They swerved, they spun, they dived. It was hard for the Void Walkers to predict them. "They are confused," Adam said, standing next to Elias. "The enemy cannot understand logic that is constantly changing. That is the human gift."
Suddenly, a message came through the comm system. It was the architects. "Human vessels, stand down. You are risking the integrity of the experiment." Elias laughed. It was a dry, tired laugh. "Experiment is over." On the main screen, the remaining architect fleet was moving. They saw that the humans were actually fighting back. The Voidwalkers were distracted by the angry swarm of human ships. "The architect leader is hailing us," Mark said. "It is a different frequency, a secure line." "Put it on," Elias said. A face appeared on the screen. It was a younger architect, scared and trembling. "We cannot defeat the Voidwalkers alone. Our ships have no biological pilots. We cannot adapt, but you can." "We are not saving you," Elias said. "No," the architect said quickly. "We offer a trade. We give you the codes to the Sun Trigger. It is a weapon in this system. You use it to destroy the Voidwalkers. We leave. We promise never to return." Elias looked at Adam. "Is there a Sun Trigger?" Adam nodded. "It is an ancient device. It pulls energy from the star. It creates a massive solar flare. It would burn this entire sector. It would kill the Voidwalkers, but it is dangerous." "Can we control it?" Elias asked. "Not from here," Adam said. "Someone has to fly the trigger ship into the sun. It is a suicide mission." Elias looked at the battle outside. The Voidwalkers were pushing back. They were learning. They were starting to predict the human movements. Human ships were dying left and right. "We don't have a choice," Elias said. "Tell the architect to send the codes." The codes arrived on the screen. A bright yellow icon appeared on the map. It was a small ship docked at the far side of the moon. "I will go," a voice said. Everyone turned. It was David. He stood up from the pilot's chair. His face was pale, but his eyes were bright. "No, David, you can't," Sarah said. "I'm the best pilot," David said, "and I am not a soldier like you, Elias. I'm just a scavenger who wanted to fly." He smiled sadly. "If I don't go, we all die. Terra Prime dies." Elias put a hand on David's shoulder. "You are a warrior, David, the best kind." David nodded. He typed a command into the console. "I am taking the shuttle. Good luck, everyone." David ran out of the bridge. A moment later, they saw on the screen that the small yellow ship had launched. It flew away from the battle, straight toward the bright sun in the distance. "All human ships," Elias said over the channel. "Clear the path. Get back to the moon." The fleet pulled back. The Voidwalkers saw the small ship flying away. Sensing a target, they swarmed toward it. The darkness chased the light. David was a good pilot. He weaved the ship through rocks and debris, dodging the black tentacles. He got closer and closer to the sun. The heat shield on his ship began to glow red. "David," Sarah said into the comm, "please be careful." "I'm seeing the light, Sarah," David's voice came back. He sounded calm. "It's beautiful. It's so bright." He reached the trigger point. "Goodbye," David whispered. He activated the device. For a second, nothing happened. Then the sun flared. A massive ring of fire exploded outwards. It was a wave of pure, blinding energy. It moved faster than light. The wave hit the Voidwalker cloud. There was no sound. The shadows just burned away. The creatures of the dark screamed in frequencies that hurt the ears, and then they were gone. The solar wave swept through the entire system, cleaning everything. The flagship's shields strained and cracked, but they held. The bridge was filled with a blinding white light. Everyone covered their eyes. When the light faded, the screen was black for a moment, then flickered back to life. The Voidwalkers were gone. The black cloud was gone. The stars were visible again. David's ship was gone, too. Sarah fell to her knees, crying. Mark took off his glasses and wiped his eyes. Even Adam looked down at the floor. Elias stood straight. He looked out the window at the silent stars. He felt a deep pain in his chest, but he also felt a sense of peace. "We won," Mark said. "Yes," Elias said. "We paid a high price, but we are free." On the radar, the architect ships were moving again. They were heading for the jump gate. "They're leaving," Adam said. "They are keeping their word."
Let them go, Elias said. If they ever come back, we will be ready. The months that followed were hard. The humans on Terra Prime had to rebuild. The architects had left behind some technology, but the humans decided to use it their own way. They didn't want to be perfect machines anymore. They wanted to be humans. Elias stood on a hill overlooking the capital city. The sun was shining. The air was clean. Sarah stood beside him. "Do you think they'll remember us?" Sarah asked. "They will never forget us," Elias said. "We were the weapon that saved them, but we are also the people who told them no." He looked at the sky. A single silver ship was flying patrol. It had human pilots. It was painted with a black stripe down the side. "We are not the experiment anymore," Elias said. "We are the masters of our own fate, and that is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy." Sarah smiled. She took his hand. "Come on, the others are waiting." They walked down the hill together. The age of control was over. The age of humanity had truly begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.